Hello, this is going to be a brief overview of my black hole eye shader and all the features that it has. So let's get into it. Upon applying the shader to a new material, it's going to look something like this. This is because my black hole eye shader uses a texture to create the noise. I have included a whole bunch of textures for you to try out. You can also make your own, and almost any texture that is a noise texture will work with this. It even works with abstract stuff like fur, etc. But for now, we're just going to slot in a noise texture and see if we can get one that we like. That's good. As a note with the noise textures, they do not have to be big. All of my noise textures are generally imported. There it is. Generally imported at 32 for the max size. It really sometimes you're going to want slightly bigger if you want to get more detail, but it really doesn't matter. It's taken over mostly by the shader. So size really doesn't matter, so I'd recommend compressing it down like as much as possible. And yeah, okay, let's continue. So you get a few noise settings here. One of them is swirl detail level. So if I set this to 0, you can see there's no swirl, just this ring. And essentially what this does is it determines how many times that noise texture is swirled here. So turning that up to like 100 obviously doesn't create the best results, but sometimes you might have a noise texture that does look really good with something like that, so I've given the option there. Personally, I look like anywhere in like the 2 to probably about 10 range is the max that I would go. But I think 5 or 6 works for almost any noise. Swirl speed is self-explanatory. It determines how fast we swirl inwards with the noise, and you can always go backwards, swirl outward too if you want to do that. Parallax layer. So this is a parallax shader. You can see this is back set, and it uses some parallaxing to determine like the cool shading. That means that you can get that nice effect. So you can obviously like back set it a whole bunch, but once again, I recommend like anywhere in the 0.3 to 0.5 range. It's really going to depend on how big your eyes are and how big you want your pupils to be, because otherwise it can start looking uncanny. But following that is pupil size, and once again, this can go really tiny or really big, and this is going to be something that you'll have to explore yourself to see what size you prefer your pupils. The default is 0.4 though. So then we get color settings, and this has everything you'd expect. Typical color grading, a hue shift for if you want to like make a slider in game. Now these two are a little bit different. Additive color directly adds color to directly adds a value to the color. This is really nice for this because you'll notice that that doesn't look particularly amazing, but if you add white, you can create much better gradations and much better universe swirls, and so that's the use of that. Personally, I think 0.1 works great for that. The bloom slider is basically like what intensity would be for the color. Just I can do the calculation after with a bit of like color correction and stuff like that. So expect any value over 0 to bloom in worlds with post-processing. Hey, it's post-video upload Zekk here, and I just added a few more settings since recording the video that I figured I would add in. The first is a rainbow shift speed, so this just automatically shifts the color across the rainbow when it's above 0, and the number controls the speed. I would put it at 100, but it's very quick. And then this little XY field here lets you control a radial out from the center rainbow. So if I set it to 3, you can see that it's swirling inward across the rainbow, and you can increase that, decrease that, however you want. And then this value y goes goes like layers in from the center, and a combination of the two can make some pretty cool effects. So yeah, I figured I would leave that in for people to play with. Yeah, now back to the rest of the showcase. Dot settings refers to these little tiny dots that swirl around. So if I change the density to 0, you can see they go away. These dots, you can adjust the size. You can make them really big so that they cover up the noise texture, make them really small so that they're just like little glitter. If you want to completely disable them, you turn down the density all the way. If you want them to be like more dense, obviously you turn up the density, turn down the density for less dense. Once again, this is something that like the defaults are what I found looks the best, but you can play around with it however you want. These also have speed adjustments. You can make them go really fast or even backwards and really play around however you want. Personally, I like to keep them like about 1 speed lower than my main swirl. I think that gives a really nice effect. Dot parallax offset. So this is an interesting setting. By turning this up, you're essentially like offsetting the parallax, and you can see it creates a really wacky effect. But with very small amounts of this, like 0.1, you can see that it does really sell that like black hole, like distortion feel. And it depends really like on your settings, but I found that it could be useful to change this. Keep in mind that in-game, sometimes this won't look amazing, even if it looks amazing in editor. So that's why I personally keep it at 0. I'd prefer for it to always look good in game. Invert dot color. Now this is like a special setting. It functionally inverts the entire like everything, including the noise texture, but it's really just based because like the dots have more contribution than just the dots themselves to the end color. But this can create some really cool effects that I found during testing, and one of my friends really liked, for example, where you can make like this demonic like death swirl effect. Let me see if I can get it right. I'm having trouble to get it right now, but yeah, there are a few cool effects you can do with that. And just in general, even if you have your dot density all the way down, it can let you put a little bit more black and a little less white into your eyes. So yeah, that's that. Miscellaneous, this is the same as my other shaders. Surface vignette applies across the surface of the shader, so if I turn that up like a ton, obviously more than practical, you can still see behind that vignette. And that's what surface vignette is, and then parallax vignette is the other way. Parallax vignette essentially extrudes like into the eye. So if I turn that up, you'll see that I can't see beyond that point. But I can see nice like straight on, like it doesn't impede my straight on view at all. A combination of the two of those create this nice effect that fades off on the edges and keeps you from seeing the distortion that you can sometimes get with parallax, and like keeps it from stretching off into infinity as well. Fallback texture. This is basically the texture that's going to appear on your eyes when people have your shaders disabled. And I have also included a fallback texture of a swirl eye for this purpose. Color also applies to that eye, so I could set it to like purple. And then when people have your shaders off, they'll see this texture with purple. And once again, these two fallback textures are included. So yeah, there is one more thing, stenciling. Stenciling can get a little bit complicated. I would say that you should look at Poyomi's documentation for stenciling if you'd like to get more in depth with it, because they have a great video on that. But the long and short of it is you can force things like eyes or eyebrows or almost anything else to appear above other geometry despite being on a different like cue. So in this example, one of the best like uses of this personally is anime style eyes, where you have an eye that appears above the hair. So I've actually set this up with my hair, and once again I'd encourage that you go look into Poyomi's documentation on this if you want to do it yourself. But you can see that my hair doesn't impede seeing eyes. And if you're going to have like amazing eyes like this, that's something I definitely thought would be handy to set up. And personally, I really like the anime style where the eyes appear above. One thing to note is that this like faded effect is done by, I have a duplicate of my hair with slight transparency that isn't stenciled out, because normally they will just appear straight on top of the eyes. So yeah, that's basically this shader. There's lots of cool stuff you can do with it, lots of colors, lots of effects, and it's very pretty. I hope you like it, and thank you for watching.